All right, I'm Chris Savanna with American Outdoor News, and I'm here with my friend Sue Tidwell, the author of Cries of the Savanna. Sue, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
So I read a little bit of your book. I've been traveling, so I haven't had a lot of time, but from what I read so far, wow.
Thank you. I like to hear that. Wow's a good thing.
I, you know, your writing style is really captivating.
Thank you. This is my first book. My friends have been telling me I should write a book for years, but I always thought, who wants to read what I have to say? But finally, Africa, just your Tanzania touched me in a way that I felt like I finally had something to say, and luckily, people seem to be enjoying it.
Africa's kind of addicting, isn't it?
It's definitely addicting. We were supposed to go only once. It was supposed to be a once in a lifetime experience. And just as warning to anyone out there, you can never go to Africa just once. It just gets in your blood and you just keep wanting to go back again and again.
It's really an outdoorsman's paradise. Even if you want to go on a photo safari or something along those lines, there's so much to see on a daily basis. Everything is ever changing, and you never know what's going to walk in front of you.
That's what the mystery of it. You never know what's around the next turn or you just never know. And every country is so different and unique. So once you get there, you of course want to explore every country and every region that you can.
So, what brought you to Tanzania?
Well, I had always dreamt of going to Africa since I was infatuated with Tarzan when I was a girl, so that ages
Who
me a little
wasn't?
bit. But so I always wanted to go to Africa, but I had pictured myself on a photo safari or something of that nature. I married a hunter, and his dream was to go hunting, big game hunting, and he wanted to do it as much like Hemingway as he could. He's read all those old books. He wanted to sleep in the bush with lions outside the tent and sleep in a tent. That was quite far from my dream, but I love adventure and I wanted to experience Africa. And even though I was hesitant and skeptical about, we become so attached to African wildlife, we put them in a pedestal and we think of them differently than we do like deer and some species we have here. I was one of those people. I put them, they were iconic, and I just didn't understand why hunting could help those species. Anyway, I trusted my husband. I trusted hunters in general. So I put on my big girl pants and went to Tanzania with my husband. And we slept in a tent with lion. That first night, we heard lions roaring right outside the tent, along with hyenas. The hippos were down in the hippo area, not too far away. We could hear them all night long. It was just an amazing experience out in the bush.
It's it's a little odd to say, but it's kind of soothing laying down in the bunk and hear the lions roaring in the distance. It's like, wow, it just grabs you.
I tell you, it's terrifying, especially in the beginning. It's terrifying, but at the same time, it just stirs something. Not to sound corny, but it just stirs something in your soul that it just makes you feel in ways, or it just enlivens you. I don't know how to put it in words exactly, but there's just something about hearing those sounds in the night that just it'll change your life basically.
Now, your husband's a hunter, you're just up for adventure. How did your views of hunting change when you went on the safari with your husband?
Well, I grew up in a hunting family of deer hunters. So I grew up eating wild meat and wild game. So I wasn't against hunting per se, but was skeptical of hunting African wildlife. But once I got over there, I learned so much and saw things from a whole different perspective, from boots on the ground. And, Tanzania is make sure a game scout goes with every hunting party to their government assigned. They're not affiliated with the hunting party at all. They are assigned to make sure everything's legal and documented. So we were lucky enough to have Lillian Maremi, who was a young female, spoke pretty good English, and she taught me so much. I mean, the outfitters and stuff did too, but coming from her, who's not affiliated with hunting and had no skin in the game, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
just and we became close friends. So she taught me so much about why hunting is so important. Even the species I questioned, like I didn't understand why hunting leopard could be good for an animal, or hunting lion. And my husband wanted to hunt a zebra. I'm attached to horses, so how could he want to hunt a zebra? But I came to understand why that stuff is so important. And so it was just, it just basically from boots on the ground is what changed my perspective.
Well, the hunter conservation model works perfectly in Africa. Uh, just controlling the numbers and feeding the masses.
Yeah, it does. Sorry, excuse me. Yeah, and that's the thing. People get so hung up on this whole trophy hunting thing, because that's how hunting in Africa is often described as trophy hunting.
Yep.
But all the meat gets eaten. I mean, not the quote or the saying is the only thing left is the wet spot. So nothing goes to waste in Africa. The bones, I mean, everything, the insides, it's just all utilized. And that's just one aspect of it. It does so much more. It makes habitat valuable in its natural form rather than them turning it into crops and
Uh-huh.
pastures and infrastructure. So there's so many reasons that hunting is important, but people just get caught up in that word trophy hunting.
Well, like let's take elephants for instance. They're you know they're not endangered. There's plenty of elephants in the world, but they're kind of an invasive species. They can tear apart or destroy somebody's farm that they worked on all year to feed their family, uh, earn a living. That's their livelihood. An elephant could come in and just take it all out in a night. And when somebody hunts an elephant, everybody knows about it. All the villagers know. And when there's a confirmed kill, they come from everywhere. They butcher this thing on the spot. They take the skin, they take the bones, they butcher the meat. There's, like you said, there's literally nothing left but a blood spot.
And that money that the hunters bring from hunting that one mature male elephant brings so much benefits to the community aside from the food. But yeah, and they have to have a reason to conserve it. When Botswana's president a few years ago, not President Masisi, but the one before him, who banned hunting, um, elephant deaths grew by 593% during that
Butchers,
time. I mean, there was
butchers.
no reason for villagers to protect elephants. They were destroying, like you said, they were destroying their crops, their infrastructure, their water wells. They had no reason to work hard to conserve them.
Yep. And through the um, revenue raised to purchase a hunting license to hunt an elephant, it goes towards the conservation of the species. It controls the people hunting them and the poachers. A lot of it goes towards anti-poaching efforts, which, as we know, we've seen with rhinos and whatnot. They can literally decimate a species.
Yeah, poaching is not regulated, as you know. So it kills young, old, male, female. It doesn't matter. There's no quotas. It's just not sustainable like hunting is.
No, not at all. And thanks to our efforts as outdoorsmen and conservationists at heart, we are preserving species for generations to come. So, uh, your trips over there, how did Cries of the Savanna come about?
Well, like I said, I was there very skeptical in the beginning of certain species, of hunting certain species. But I became so attached to because we were in a camp with 21 Tanzanians taking care of us for over 3 weeks.
Wow.
And you spend all day with these people, as you well know. And I just became so attached to the people and to I just understood how important it was for rural communities to have well managed hunting in there as part of the wildlife management program. And I knew if I was skeptical, as a person who grew up in a hunting family and goes hunting with my husband when it's elk hunting or deer hunting, I knew if I was skeptical, there were so many more people like me.
Hmm.
So I made Lillian a promise before I left that I would try to help people like me understand. I really didn't know what I was promising, to be honest. I tried doing posts on social media. I tried a bunch of stuff, but ultimately it came to where I needed to write a book to try to educate and help other people understand. So that promise evolved into Cries of the Savanna.
Writing a book's an undertaking. It's not, okay, you're taking a pen to paper. I mean, there's a lot of thought process. There's laying out how the chapters are going to unfold. And I mean, you really tell a spectacular story. It- how
Thank you.
how
Sorry, go
did
ahead. I'm sorry.
how did you put together such a such a well laid plan? I mean, storytelling is an art form.
I guess I've read I've read enough books. Luckily, I'm a reader. I think being a reader really helps, so um and I know I wanted to capture people's attention with the adventure part of it because I just fell in love with Africa and its people. And I wanted everyone else to feel what I was feeling. I wanted to take them with me on the adventure. So I knew it had to be an adventure. And then I weaved in conservation in bits and pieces as I learned it myself. Because I didn't want to just like hammer conservation. I mean, that would be a boring book. And,
No.
no one wants to read it. So I made it, I tried to instinctively, I guess, I just felt like I had to take these people on a grand adventure, um, share what I learned, and then just kind of weave in what I learned along the way. And that's kind of what I did. Honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I did everything backwards. I wrote the book before I researched anything. And I mean, before I researched the actual publishing of a book, or I made a lot of mistakes along the way.
Oh,
But
by
anyway,
the way, I wrote a book. Yeah, that's good.
yeah, now what do I do? I'll tell
So,
you a funny little story. So, as I said, I wrote for 2 years. It took
wow.
me. And because I'm a slow writer, I have to really think about things. It just doesn't, I just really work on it. But anyway, when I finally put it all together and found out you had to count your words and everything, I had 800 pages of book. And
Wow.
so
That's a
my
that's
husband
a
was,
series.
that was all, yeah. So my husband was so tired of me being with the book, he just kept saying, "Oh my God, so just publish it, just publish it." I'm like, "Rick, no one wants to read 800 pages." And he said, "Well, the Iliad and the Odyssey is 800 pages." And I said, "Well, I am not the Iliad and the Odyssey." So anyway, I had to go back through and do what they call murder your little darlings. So I had to slice and dice and take stuff out that,
Uh-huh.
was not as important or not as relevant or whatever. So yeah, that was tough to do after writing it, but that's part of the process.
So once you cut it down to uh, novel form, instead of the series, how do you go about getting published? You wrote a book. It's really well written. The story is fantastic. How do you bring it to a publishing house and say, "Hey, I got a great story"? They get them every day. How do you capture their attention?
Well, to be honest, I didn't because I read all that's involved in the whole query process, and I reached out to a few because you'll hear people that reach out to 30, 40, 50 queries and get turned down, and I reached out to a few, but be honest, think about it. I'm a first-time author, I'm a woman, I'm a non-hunter writing about hunting in Africa. So you can see how publishers might be skeptical of that. No one probably really took the time to read my work or to read the words. They just saw this novice. So I went about the self-publishing route. I researched it. I got my own editor. I got my own cover artist. Which I kept all the money in Africa. I tried to, talk what I or preach what I talk, basically. So my editor's from Africa. My artist was from Africa. So I tried to do that, and I just figured it out and kind of published it on Amazon basically to start with. Now it's available on other platforms as well, but I started out with Amazon.
So you didn't walk into a publishing office dressed like Ernest Hemingway carrying a
No, no, they didn't know who they wouldn't know who Sue Tidwell was. Oh,
Well, I tell you something. If they read your first book, they're gonna know your name.
oh, well, thank you, thank you. That's it means a lot to me.
Well, as a publisher myself, I read a lot of stories every day, and most of them are not written like this. They're not, they're people like me. I write. I'm not a writer.
Mhm.
Um, I write a story how I tell you a story, and that's not what people want to read. So thank God for my own editors that make my stories palatable.
Well, I'm just, I guess, fortunate that when it comes to words, I guess I'm a good storyteller. I mean, I've been the joke in my family, I've been writing these 10-page Christmas letters for years. And they were always these adventure filled Christmas letters, when I was living in Alaska and when I moved to Idaho and going hunting with Rick. So they're all adventure filled. And my friends had been telling me for years, Sue, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. So I guess I had that a little bit of confidence that maybe I could tell a story. So, that gave me a boost basically.
That helps. It helps to have friends that are honest with you
Mm-hmm.
and will give you an honest critique of your work, um, and not give any false hope. Um, Not that there was any warranted here. Who designed your cover? It really grabs you.
Um, Gertie Fullard from Namibia. She's a graphic designer, and Jocelyn Engel of huntersinc.com. She's the editor of huntersinc.com and We Are Hunting magazine. We became friends on Instagram essentially. And I think I had done an article for her just from being about Tanzania. Anyway, I reached out to her telling her about my book and does she think I really need an editor? Long story short, she volunteered. She ended up being my editor. And then she's the one that knew Gertie and hooked me up with Gertie. And together they came up with several ideas for the cover. And this one I just fell in love with. I mean, it just was perfect, I thought, for the book.
I believe it jumps out at you and really encapsulates the story itself. Um, I love it. So, um, self-publishing. How do you go about finding a printer, getting it laid out? How do you go about all that?
Well, they do have some companies out there that can help you along the way, like selfpublishing.com and I think Book Baby. But they of course charge you money to help you with that. I
Of
did mine
course.
on my own. I found my own editor, which was Jocelyn, and she helped me with the cover. And then of course, you go to KDP on Amazon and you find their guidelines and all the stuff. They give you the formats of what you need and what kind of how the book has to be formatted. And then you have to have all your words formatted. So the first time I hired somebody to do that, but I found that was really expensive. So I ended up buying a program to do my own formatting. And of course, that's one reason this took so long to get out there. Everything is a learning curve for somebody and rather seasoned who is not very tech savvy. I had to learn all this stuff. But so yeah, I just basically now I do my own formatting and just kind of I YouTube is a savior. If you need to know anything, you just go to YouTube. Kindlepreneur is a great one to help you with learning how to self-publish. He's a great resource. There's lots of videos out there. So I just kind of figured it out one step at a time and did it that way.
Amazing.
And then on Amazon, what's cool about Amazon when you publish on Amazon, it's called print on demand. So I can order author copies at their price, but when somebody buys, I don't have to buy 1,000 copies of a book, put it that way.
Yeah.
So when somebody orders it, they print it right then and there. So that saves the author having to come up with thousands and thousands of dollars to buy a bunch of books. So that is a huge help. And that's why I started with Amazon. And like I said, now I went wide, but it's still a print on demand type of a deal.
Hmm. I've heard of t-shirts on demand where they'll print your t-shirt and you don't have to keep inventory. I had no idea that there were print houses that do that as well.
Yeah. And like when I want author copies, say I'm going to an event, I'll just order 100 what they call author copies from Amazon, and I get them at a lower price, and then I can sell them at the events and stuff.
So what kind of advice would you give to somebody that's thinking about writing a book?
Oh, do some research first. I did everything backwards. I wrote and then researched, but there's a lot of stuff I've learned since that. You want to make sure you're targeting the right audience. Like me, to be honest, I just wrote from the heart. So luckily, the book appeals to hunters, non-hunters, men and women, and even teenagers. So I ended up appealing to a lot of people, but the more I learn, you're not really supposed to do that. You're supposed to target one group of people. So I don't know if you want to call that doing it wrong or doing it right. I don't know, but that's the way it turned out for me. And for this book, I think that's the best way to go. But if you're going to write a book, I just definitely would research, find about how many words it should be, the target audience. Just there's just a lot of research out there to do a little bit before you start your writing.
You think being an author is just about having a great story, putting it on paper, and trying to get it out there, but sounds like there's a hell of a lot more entailed.
And then that's the easy part. The marketing is the really hard part because, I mean, unless there's 2,000 books a month that go on Amazon, new books. So your book just gets buried if if people aren't buying it and looking for it. So it's important to be on social media. It's important to do podcasts. I mean, the marketing is really the difficult part of things. So anyway, so I appreciate you having me here and exposing some people to the book.
So where do we find it?
It is on Amazon, and then all your other, you can order it through the other networks or other distributors as well. It's also an audiobook now, so it actually includes like the sounds of the lions and hippos and hyenas and stuff as I heard them.
Wow.
I wanted people to feel like they're there with me. So anyway, it's in audio at your basic platforms, Audible, Spotify. It's also free on Carbon TV. The Audible version is by podcast as a podcast by chapter. So if you want to listen that way, you can do that. But and when if you're a person who likes signed copies, you can go to my website, SueTidwell.com, and I can send you a signed copy.
So Amazon, we just look up Cries of the Savanna and it'll come up?
Yep, Cries of the Savanna by Sue Tidwell, or just Cries of the Savanna should probably come up.
What about like books about Africa?
Hopefully it would come up. It would if you look far enough. It's all about your keywords.
So
you know what I mean? So hopefully if you just write books about Africa, there's 100,000 books about Africa. I mean, I'm exaggerating, maybe not quite that many, but there's a lot of books about Africa. So it depends where I am in that. If I'm not one of the best selling, if something else is, then that book's going to come up before mine. So it would be nice if it would come up as soon as somebody typed that in.
Well, we're going to work on that.
Okay, that sounds good.
I definitely appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. Definitely go to Sue's site, SueTidwell.com.
Yep, SueTidwell.com.
And look her up on Amazon or listen to her on Spotify. You're not going to be disappointed. I can tell you that for a fact. Thanks again. And you can subscribe to our channel, American Outdoor News, on Spotify and iHeartRadio, iTunes, and all the rest of them.
Well, thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, anytime.